It was just another rainy Tuesday morning in the city. The kind of rain that soaks your socks through your shoes and makes everyone a little meaner, a little colder. Except for her. Elena stood quietly in line at the pharmacy, her scrubs still damp from the storm outside, her shift badge half covered in raindrops. She hadn't eaten since yesterday evening. The night shift had been brutal, a code blue at 3 a.m., an elderly woman who died holding her hand, and now this, standing under flickering lights, hoping the painkillers for her sister's back wouldn't take the last of her money. Then she saw him. An old man with cloudy eyes, trembling hands, and the kind of fragile dignity that made you instinctively want to stand a little straighter. He handed the cashier a few wrinkled bills, his voice barely audible. "I'm sorry, sir. You're short," the cashier said, without even a trace of empathy. The man looked confused, reaching into empty pockets. And something in Elena broke. Without hesitation, she stepped forward. "I'll cover it," she said softly, placing her last crumpled note on the counter. The old man turned slowly, eyes locking with hers, stunned. "Why would you?" But she just smiled. "You need it more than I do." She didn't know his name. She didn't ask for it. And she walked out of the store into the rain, with one less dollar, but a heart still heavy with kindness. What Elena didn't know was that the man she'd helped wasn't just anyone. He was Henry Caldwell, one of the wealthiest, most powerful, and most mysterious men in the country. And this single act of compassion would unravel a story so unbelievable, so soul-stirring, it would change her life forever. So don't go anywhere, because what you're about to witness is the kind of story that will stay with you long after the screen fades to black. Stay with me. Elena Morales was the kind of woman people passed by without noticing, not because she was invisible, but because she never demanded attention. She just moved through the world like a quiet force, holding patients' hands, wiping sweat from brows, whispering words of comfort that often no one else had time to say. At just 29, Elena had already seen more pain than most people see in a lifetime. She had been working double shifts at the city's public hospital for nearly 5 years. The job wasn't glamorous. There were no fancy cafeterias, no sparkling lobbies like in private clinics. This was the hospital that took in everyone. The uninsured, the homeless, the forgotten. And Elena. She loved them all the same. She lived in a tiny one-bedroom apartment in a run-down part of town. The wallpaper peeled, the pipes moaned in the winter, and some nights she couldn't even hear her own thoughts over the sirens screaming down the street. But it was home. Hers and her younger sister's. Carmen, Elena's sister, had been injured in a car accident a year ago, leaving her with limited mobility and chronic back pain. Their parents were long gone, and Elena had stepped into the role of caregiver without hesitation. Every extra hour at the hospital, every skipped meal, every quiet tear she cried behind bathroom doors, it was all for Carmen. She hadn't gone on a date in years. She didn't party, didn't travel. Her life was about others, her patients, her sister. And somehow, even with nothing left to give, she gave more. But lately, it had been getting harder. The bills were piling up. Carmen's physical therapy wasn't covered by their insurance. Elena had started selling her clothes online, skipping meals, and walking to work even in the cold to save on bus fare. That morning at the pharmacy, when she gave her last dollar for someone else's medicine, it wasn't because she had enough. It was because she knew what it felt like to have nothing and still need help. She never imagined that small act of kindness would change her life. But somewhere, tucked deep in the pockets of a wrinkled coat and behind those old watery eyes, was a secret, a test, a billionaire in disguise. And Elena had just passed. As Elena walked away from the counter that day, the old man stood silently in the aisle of the pharmacy, clutching the brown paper bag of medicine she had paid for. His hand trembled slightly, not from age, but from something else. Emotion, maybe. Or memory. His name was Harold Whitmore. But Elena didn't know that. The city did, though. His name was whispered in real estate boardrooms and luxury auction houses. He was one of those billionaires that rarely made headlines, by choice. Old money, old secrets. A recluse. After losing his wife to cancer a decade earlier, he had disappeared from the social world and lived in near anonymity, rarely showing his face in public. No security guards. No flashy suits. Just a man in a worn coat who looked like any other pensioner waiting for his prescription. But that day, Harold wasn't testing the system. He wasn't trying to disguise himself for sport. He was simply tired. Tired of being seen for his money. Tired of being treated like a prize. He dressed down, taken the train, and walked into that pharmacy to feel human again. And then Elena appeared. He hadn't asked for help. In fact, he'd already decided to leave the medication behind and return another day. But when she handed the pharmacist her own money, without hesitation, something cracked open inside him. He hadn't felt kindness like that in years. Later that night, Harold sat in his sprawling estate, the same one featured in architecture magazines, sipping a cup of chamomile tea alone. The marble floors echoed with emptiness. The fire crackled, but gave no warmth. He looked around the room filled with priceless art and thought of a nurse with soft eyes who didn't ask for anything in return. "Find her," he said to his assistant the next morning. But discreetly. She didn't know it yet, but her life was about to change. And not just because of money, but because one stranger had finally seen the truth in her heart. Harold didn't believe in grand gestures. Not at first. He believed in understanding people before rewarding them. In his world, money had often attracted the worst kinds of behavior. False smiles, fake tears, manipulation. But there was something about Elena's kindness that felt different. Genuine. Unrehearsed. So, he asked his assistant, Darren, a quiet, meticulous man who had been with him for over 20 years, to look into her life. "Nothing invasive," Harold said. "Just tell me who she is." A week later, Darren returned with a modest manila folder. "She's a nurse," he began. "Works double shifts at County General. Not because she wants to, but because she has to. Her mother's diabetic and partially blind. Lives with her. She takes care of her full-time when she's not at the hospital." Harold leaned forward, eyes narrowing slightly. "She has a little boy," Darren continued, "about 5 years old. His name is Micah. Smart kid. Quiet, like her. No father in the picture. Deadbeat. Left before the boy was born. Never came back." Harold nodded slowly, processing the weight of it all. The folder also revealed past due bills. A heating notice. A scholarship she declined at a private hospital because the public one offered better hours for her son. Sacrifices. Quiet, consistent sacrifices. Darren paused before handing him a photo. It was a candid shot taken by someone outside her building. Elena, walking Micah to school, holding his little hand while balancing a thermos and a lunch bag. Her eyes were tired, but she was smiling. Not for the camera. She didn't know she was being watched. She was smiling for her son. Harold held the photo for a long time. "She didn't think twice," he murmured. "She gave her last $40 to a stranger." Darren nodded. "Most people wouldn't have." "No," Harold said, his voice soft. "But she did. And she didn't want a thank you. That kind of heart doesn't come from wealth. It comes from pain. From love." He stood, walked to the window, and looked out over the sweeping gardens of his estate. Somewhere out there in the city, Elena was finishing another 12-hour shift, maybe riding the late bus home, maybe picking up groceries with a tight budget. Harold made a decision right there. He didn't want to throw money at her. He wanted to change her life, but in a way that wouldn't make her feel like a charity case. She had pride and dignity. This had to be done with care, with grace. "Start with the hospital," Harold said. "I want to create a position, a research coordinator role, less physical strain, better pay, flexible hours. But make sure it's something she earns on paper." "You want her to think it's a promotion?" "No," Harold smiled. "I want it to be a promotion, one she deserves." Darren nodded, understanding now. "And the rest?" Harold's eyes twinkled. "We'll take it one miracle at a time." 2 weeks after that rainy night, Elena's life, so used to stillness, began to quietly change. It started with a conversation at the nurse's station. Elena, her supervisor, called one morning. "Do you have a minute?" She braced herself, assuming it would be another shift extension or a patient complaint. Instead, her supervisor smiled gently and handed her a sealed envelope. "We've been reviewing staff performance," she said. "There's a new position opening in the research department. Less demanding hours. Better pay. You've been shortlisted." Elena blinked. "Me? You've been one of our most consistent team members. Always putting in extra hours. Never a single patient complaint. You deserve this." Elena stared at the letter. The numbers on the offer inside made her chest tighten. It wasn't just better, it was nearly double her current pay. And the hours. 9 to 4. Monday to Friday. She could actually tuck Micah into bed at night. She could cook dinner, not just reheat leftovers. Her hands trembled. "Is this real?" The supervisor chuckled. "You'll need to interview with the research director, but yes, it's very real." As she walked home that evening, the city lights seemed softer, kinder. She picked Micah up from daycare and they stopped for ice cream, just because they could. She didn't have to check her wallet 4 times. She didn't have to choose between milk and a treat. That weekend, more changes trickled in. The landlord posted a notice in the hallway. Someone had anonymously paid the next 4 months of her rent. Elena's knees almost buckled when she read it. She rushed to the office, breathless. "Who paid it?" she asked. The clerk shrugged. Said it was a "thank you for being kind." "That's all I know." Micah tugged her sleeve as they walked back to the apartment. "Mommy, does this mean we can keep the goldfish?" Elena laughed through her tears. "Yes, baby. We can keep the goldfish." But the changes didn't stop there. The following Monday, her mother's doctor called. A specialized ophthalmologist had agreed to review her file, pro bono. A miracle. A waiting list that should have been 2 years suddenly dissolved. An appointment was booked for the very next week. Elena sat in the break room staring at her hands. It was too much. Too sudden. Too impossible. "I must be dreaming," she whispered. Across the city, Harold watched the quiet ripple effect of his actions from his office window. He didn't want thanks. He didn't want attention. He just wanted her to breathe again. That night, Elena walked into her apartment and found Micah drawing at the kitchen table. "What are you making, sweetheart?" He held up a scribbled picture, a woman with angel wings, standing in front of a hospital, a little boy beside her. "It's you," he said proudly. "Because you're an angel. Angels help people, right?" Elena bit her lip. Sometimes people help angels too. And somewhere in the city, a billionaire who had once sat on a rain-soaked bench felt something stir in his chest. Something warmer than money had ever given him. The day of the hospital charity gala came faster than Elena expected. She almost didn't go. The research director had personally invited her after her interview, saying it would be good to meet other medical staff and donors. "You deserve to be celebrated," he'd said. "Your work matters." But Elena didn't have a fancy dress. She didn't have shoes that didn't squeak. And she certainly didn't feel like she belonged in a ballroom with chandeliers and violin music. Still, she borrowed a dress from a friend, scrubbed Micah's old jelly stain off her heels, and forced herself to go. The event was held at the Grandview Hotel, one of the city's most luxurious venues. Just stepping through the doors made Elena want to disappear into the wallpaper. She found a quiet corner near the appetizers and sipped sparkling water, hoping she wouldn't have to talk to anyone. Then she heard it. "Ladies and gentlemen," the MC's voice echoed across the hall, "please welcome our keynote speaker and newest major donor, Mr. Harold M. Kingston." Elena almost dropped her glass. She turned slowly. The man walking up to the stage was wearing a sleek black tuxedo, his silver hair combed back, his presence commanding. People clapped. Cameras flashed. Micah's old man from the pharmacy. She staggered back a step. Her heart raced. No, it couldn't be. But then he spoke. "Some weeks ago," Harold began, his voice calm but resonant, "I was reminded that kindness is often quiet. It doesn't scream. It doesn't ask for recognition. But when you see it, especially when you least expect it, it changes you. Elena's mouth went dry. I was just another man on a bad day, he continued. And someone helped me when I didn't deserve it. That moment stayed with me. It reminded me of the value of compassion in a world often too busy to care. The room was silent now, every face turned toward him. So tonight, in honor of the nurse who reminded me what humanity looks like, I'm donating $2 million to this hospital's emergency care fund. And I'm requesting the first scholarship under my name go to one of the nurses in this room, Elena Hart. Gasps swept across the ballroom. Elena froze. People turned toward her. A spotlight fell on her table. Her legs felt like rubber. Harold looked directly at her. No smile, no wink. Just a calm nod, as if to say, I know who you are. And I meant every word. A wave of emotion surged through her. Humiliation, confusion, gratitude, disbelief. He was a billionaire, a Kingston. And she had served him coffee, shared a bench, paid for his medication with her last 20. Everything around her blurred. Applause broke out. People clapped for her. For her. Tears welled in her eyes. She stood slowly, awkwardly, unsure of what to do. She wanted to run, but her feet stayed rooted. Harold stepped off the stage. Cameras followed him, but he brushed past them. He walked straight to her. Elena, he said gently. She opened her mouth, but no words came. You saved my life in more ways than you know, he said. I didn't know, she whispered. I didn't do it for this. I know, Harold said. That's what makes you remarkable. She looked at him, really looked at him. The old man from the pharmacy. The stranger with the sad eyes. The billionaire with the broken past. And for the first time in weeks, she smiled. Not the tired smile of someone trying to hold everything together, but the real one. The one that comes from finally being seen. The days after the gala were a whirlwind. News spread like wildfire. Billionaire saved by nurse's kindness. Mystery benefactor funds hospital in nurse's name. Kingston family makes rare public appearance. Elena's photo made it to the local paper. The hospital cafeteria buzzed with whispers. Patients who barely spoke before suddenly lit up when she entered their rooms. But the fame wasn't what mattered to Elena. What mattered was that the scholarship Harold created wasn't just for her. It was for dozens of nurses. For the ones pulling double shifts. For the ones raising children and caring for strangers in the same breath. For the silent warriors who never asked for thanks. And Harold, he didn't disappear. He started showing up. Quietly, without cameras. Sometimes just to read to the children in the pediatric ward. Sometimes to deliver new equipment anonymously. And once, to pick Micah up from school with Elena when her car wouldn't start again. He had changed too. Not just the clothes or the headlines. But something in his spirit had healed. One evening, Elena invited Harold to dinner. Nothing fancy. Just spaghetti, garlic bread, and Micah's questionable chocolate pudding for dessert. They sat around her small kitchen table, laughter echoing against the tiled walls. Micah asked Harold about flying helicopters. Elena teased him about that first day on the bench. And Harold, he laughed like someone who hadn't in years. Later that night, as Micah slept curled on the couch, Elena washed dishes with Harold beside her. You didn't have to do all of this, she whispered. I didn't, he said. But I wanted to. She looked up at him. Why? Harold paused, then said softly, because when the world forgot who I was, you remembered I was still human. And now, I just want to remind the world who you are too. Elena's eyes filled again, not with exhaustion, but with peace. And maybe, the beginning of something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Months later, Elena stood in the hospital's new nurse education wing. A plaque on the wall read, The Elena Hart Compassionate Care Center, funded by the Kingston Foundation. Students filed in, single mothers, immigrants, young dreamers, people who had nearly given up until someone believed in them. And at the very back of the room, standing tall and proud, was Harold, dressed not in designer suits, but in the cardigan Micah had picked for him, because it makes you look nice and huggable. Elena stepped up to the podium. Her voice trembled only slightly as she spoke. "I used to think I was invisible. Just another tired face behind a counter. But kindness echoes louder than any fame. What you give may seem small, but it might just change someone's entire world." She looked at Harold. He nodded, eyes glistening, and the crowd rose to their feet. Applause thundered through the hall. But for Elena, it wasn't about the noise. It was about the silence she used to live in, and the joy of finally being heard. Sometimes, the people we overlook are carrying the weight of the world quietly. And sometimes, one small act of compassion, like paying for a stranger's medicine, can ripple into a miracle that changes everything. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who believes in kindness, and subscribe for more soul-twisting stories that remind us. The smallest gesture can leave the biggest mark. See you in the next one.